that chapter, we are going to concentrate on the topic conservation of biodiversity. Conservation of biodiversity. So how we can conserve the biodiversity in different ways, like in-situ conservation, ex-situ conservation, hotspots, international efforts for conserving biodiversity. So these are the concepts we are going to concentrate today. So before entering into conservation of biodiversity, one should know what is biodiversity. Okay. So biodiversity means richness of species. You can say, okay, or else heterogeneity. That is variation in anything, biological organization, even biomes, even if you take biomolecules, there are variations. Okay, so this is called as biodiversity. So this word biodiversity was first used by Edward. So question may be asked, Edward Wilson. So who popularized this word biodiversity? Edward Wilson. Okay. So generally this includes different type of diversities. Let us see one by one. First one is genetic diversity. Okay. Genetic diversity. So one simple example I'll give. Many examples are given in your book. So if you take in India, there are nearly 50,000 varieties of rice. Varieties of rice. Okay. And if you take mangoes, there are 1,000 different varieties of mangoes are there in India. In India alone, I'm talking about. Okay. So next thing, if you take, this is called as genetic diversity. And if you take species, so if you talk about species diversity, for example, if you compare Western Ghats with Western and Eastern Ghats, so in Western Ghats, there are more varieties of amphibians. Amphibians when compared to Eastern Ghats. Okay. So in Western Ghats, the diversity is more. Many different varieties of amphibians are present in Western Ghats when compared to Eastern Ghats. Okay. And the third one is ecological diversity. So ecological diversity means if you take different landscapes of India, for example, if you compare the desert part, that is Rajasthan, with Himalayas. So if you compare both, entirely, they are different from each other. And even if you take Kerala, the climate and ecological characterization varies. Okay, so this is called as ecological diversity. But if you compare India with Norway, so what will be the ecology in Norway? So it is in pole. Okay, so totally it is filled with ice. So we cannot expect diversity in Norway. But in India, we have different, that is rain forests we have, deserts we have, mangroves we have. Okay, so this diversity is not possible in all countries, but especially some part of the world, they have ecological diversity. Okay, so next to that, and based on that is different types of diversity happens based on the latitudes. Okay, so if you compare near equator, species diversity is more. Diversity is more. So let me give few examples. For example, at equator, Colombia is there. It has 1,400. Just I'm talking about birds alone. So 1,400 species of birds are there in Colombia. If you take another country, New York. Okay. So New York, 41 degree north. There you can see only 150 species of birds. And further, if you move towards poles, like 71 degree north, okay, 71 degree north, Greenland. If you take Greenland, only 56 species of birds are available. Clear? So from equator, when you move towards poles, diversity decreases. Clear? This you have to remember. And if you take India, how many species of birds are there? Totally 1,200 species of birds are there. Okay. And let us talk about Amazon forest. So it is the tropical rainforest. It is the tropical rainforest with most diversity in the universe. Okay. So there are almost 40,000 plants in Amazon. There are almost 40,000 plants and 3,000 types of fishes are there and 1,300 types of birds are there. So question may be asked, you have to remember the figures for each and every species. Okay. And 427 varieties of mammals are there. And again, 427 amphibians. 427 types of amphibians are there in Amazon and 378 types of reptiles are there. Okay. And apart from that, 1,25,000 varieties of invertebrates are there in Amazon. So you have to remember all the figures. Okay. So this is an introduction about biodiversity. Okay. So why I'm talking about this means before entering into the conservation of biodiversity, you should know how the loss of biodiversity is happening. Okay. So there are different reasons for loss of biodiversity. Let me explain. Okay. Many of the species are extinct. That means they are being lost due to the human activities. First one is habitat loss. What do you mean by habitat loss? So habitat loss means human activities are destroying the habitats where the animals, birds, and even plants are living. Okay. So this is due to the human activity. I'll give one example. In Amazon, for planting soybean, most of the forest was destroyed. Okay. And so that the organisms which are living in the forest will be lost. And the second one is due to over-exploitation. Due to over-exploitation means, for example, if one species is using another species as food, and if it is over-exploiting this species means automatically this will become extinct. Clear? This is called as over-exploitation. And the third reason for habitat loss of biodiversity is alien species inversion. Alien species inversion. So one fine example, even you might have learnt the invasion of Parthenium. It is a weed. So invasion of Parthenium, it destroys so many species. Okay. And one more example is African catfish. African catfish. So actually this is banned one because the introduction of this fish in different countries destroys more than 200 species. So in India, in Kerala, they introduced, okay, but soon they identified 9 species of fishes extinct because this new species will use the other different species for food. So totally 9 species extinct. So in India, it is banned now. Okay. So these are the reasons for the loss of biodiversity. So it is must for us to conserve biodiversity because, for example, that is diversity in the universe will make universe a better one. Okay. If there is loss in biodiversity, that will decrease the quality of the universe. Okay. For example, if we remove, that was explained by one scientist, and he explained very well with the aeroplane. Okay, that is called as, let me write here, Paul Ehrlich. So he explained the hypothesis like Ribot-Popper hypothesis. Ribot-Popper hypothesis. So if you remove one ribot from the airplane, it does not give that much effect. But if you keep on removing one by one the ribots, automatically the functionality of the airplane will that will cause great damage. Okay, and again you have to remember that which ribot we are removing. If you are removing a ribot near the what to say, that is important ribot, if you are removing, automatically that will cause a great damage immediately. Okay, so like that, if you are removing, if any species from the universe is getting extinct, that will cause the removal of other species also, that will decrease the quality of universe. Okay, so because of these reasons, we have to conserve the biodiversity. So let us see how we are going to conserve the biodiversity. So there are 2 different types of biodiversity conservation. One is in-situ conservation, and the second one is ex-situ conservation. So what do you mean by in-situ conservation? Just we are not going to disturb the habitat of animal. Okay, so just as such in their habitat, we are going to save the species. That is called as in-situ conservation. But will you think, is it possible? Because there are, that is, if you take big countries, the landscape of the landscape to be conserved is very large in amount. Okay, so it is very tough for conservation to carry out in situ conservation. So for that, again, the biologists selected this ex situ conservation. That is, they remove the species from their habitat and they protect them in other ecological systems. Okay, that is artificially created ecological systems. They used to protect the endangered species. Clear? So let us see one by one. So in situ conservation, as I told, the conservation of genetic resources within natural or human-made ecosystems in which they occur. As such, that is, for example, if you are developing a park and so many, during that is initial stages, we does not have so many species in the park which we developed newly. But later, if you see, so many insects, so many birds will come and live in that newly developed park. So that is called as human-made ecosystem. Okay. So again, we are providing the habitat for the animals. Okay. So we can protect the natural environment or areas such as national parks. So what comes under in situ conservation? One is national parks. The second one is sanctuaries. The third one is biosphere reserves. And fourth one is cultural landscapes. And fifth one is natural monuments. Okay. So we are going to see one by one. And in India, if you take totally 14 biosphere reserves and 90 national parks and 448 wildlife sanctuaries are present. You have to remember the number: 14 biosphere reserves, 90 national parks, and 448 wildlife sanctuaries are present. Okay, so let us see one by one. What is national park? So you might have visited many national parks. In your book, Eravikulam National Park, which is present in Kerala, is given. Eravikulam National Park, it is in Munnar, Kerala. Okay, so strictly reserved for the welfare of wildlife. Okay, we cannot buy any land in national parks. Okay, private ownership is banned. It is not possible. You have to keenly observe at which conservation spots, which activities are permissible. That you have to remember. Question may be asked. Okay, so strictly reserved for wildlife, where the private ownership or cultivation or grazing, everything is prohibited. So in national park, private activities not possible. You have to remember this. Okay, example given in your book is Eravikulam National Park in Kerala. Clear? So second thing is sanctuaries. So sanctuaries, when compared to national park, area wise it is bigger. Okay, here the protection is given only to the animals, but here human activities are allowed, like collection of timbers, minor forest honey collection, okay, and even some medicinal plant collection. Everything is allowed here. Okay, and private ownership are allowed. So you have to remember, in sanctuaries, private ownership is allowed. So that is, we should not harm any animals. There are some rules to follow in sanctuaries. So example is Periyar Wildlife Sanctuary in Kerala. Okay. The third one is Biosphere Reserves. Biosphere Reserves, area of land or coastal ecosystems for conservation and sustainable use. So here also human activities are allowed, but to some extent. So as such, in the environment, that is by nature, the coastal areas and other ecosystems are present, and we are conserving in their existence itself. Okay, so that is called as Biosphere Reserves. And the fourth one is sacred groves. So you know very well that even in Tamil Nadu, if you see neem trees and even bilba trees, so these are called as sacred trees. Okay, so that is, the people have belief that there is, even they worship these trees, like even plants like tulsi, you know very well. Okay, and some flowers which they are offering for God, they are considered as sacred plants and sacred trees. Okay, so forest fragments which are communally protected based on religious beliefs. So in many that is, if you take interior part of the forest, some people are living even now. Okay, and they are having religious beliefs of many of the varieties of trees. So sacred groves, example Kasi and Jaintia in Meghalaya. Okay, and even Aravalli Hills in Rajasthan, Western Ghat regions of Karnataka and Maharashtra. So these are communally, they are having religious belief and they are protecting the areas, okay, particular areas. And others are Sarguja, Chanda and Bastar, areas of Madhya Pradesh, okay, central India. Sarguja, Chanda and Bastar in Madhya Pradesh, Western Ghats in Karnataka and Maharashtra, Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan, and Kasi and Jaintia Hills in Meghalaya. Clear? So you have to remember all these terms. And these are the fourth type of in-situ conservation. As such, they are living in their habitat and we are protecting the organisms. Okay, either trees or birds or animals or insects, anything. So the second type is ex-situ conservation. So ex-situ conservation, when we are going to use this and why we have to use this, let us see. Okay, so it is the conservation of organisms outside their habitat. Okay, if some species are endangered and it is in the threat of extinction, so they are in the threat of extinction means we have to remove from their habitat and we will take care by providing artificial habitat, man-made habitat. Okay. So let us see genetic resource centers. What are they? Genetic resource centers, zoological parks, wildlife safari parks, botanical gardens, gene banks, cryopreservation. So these are the major examples for ex-situ conservation. Okay. So what is the definition for ex-situ conservation? It is the conservation of organisms outside their habitats. Let us see one by one. So what do you mean by genetic resource centers? So genetic resource centers, we can, you know very well that a plant can be formed from any small tissue. We can isolate cell. By cell culture or tissue culture, we can produce entire plant. Okay, that is called as genetic resource center. So if a plant or animals are in endangered condition, automatically we can collect and store the even gametes we can collect. Gametes we can collect and store, and we can carry out in vitro fertilization to produce organisms. Okay, and zoological parks, you know. Okay, so in so many zoological parks, you can see the different varieties of white peacock and even different animals which you can't see in the natural environment. Okay, that is where the human activities are more. We cannot see such animals or birds. Okay, so wildlife safari parks. So wildlife safari park, even in Singapore, it is very famous. So different type of birds they are having. Okay, so it will be larger in area. So safari parks means we have to visit the animals because they will provide the natural environment for the animals or birds. Okay, so we cannot go near to the animals, and we will travel in vehicles. Okay, without making any noise. The battery vehicles will be used in wildlife safari parks, and even in Bangalore it is there. Okay, so then botanical gardens. So botanical gardens, if you might have visited Ooty, Kodaikanal, and all hill stations, we can say all hill stations. So many different varieties of plants they are developing, and even hybrid plants they are developing, and they are maintaining gardens. Okay, so gene banks. So gene banks, again, the superior quality, superior species can be stored in gene banks. And what do you mean by cryopreservation? So again, cryopreservation means by liquid nitrogen, we can freeze any kind of tissues. That is called as cryopreservation. And even seeds can be stored for many years. So whenever we want to use, we can use those seeds. Okay, these are the ex-situ conservation methods. So by following all these ex-situ conservation methods, we can protect biodiversity. Okay, we can conserve biodiversity. So next, let us talk about hotspots. So why the biologists created this term hotspots? I already told you that area-wise, that is, if you take Amazon forest, area-wise, it is very large. It is not possible to protect each and every inch of that forest. Okay, so for that, biologists selected this term hotspot. That is the spot which is having species richness. So hotspots, there are the regions with very high species richness, high degree of endemism. They are called as, that is, but most threatened. That is, they are in endangered stage. If we are not taking care, they will be extinct. We cannot see after 10 years. Okay, such kind of spots biologists selected and named as hotspots. There are totally in the world 34 hotspots. Previously 25 were there. Now added 9, totally 24 hotspots are there in the world. Okay, so 3 hotspots in that 34, 3 hotspots cover India's biodiversity regions, Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma and Himalaya. So these are the hotspots which are present in India. So what do you mean by hotspots? In those areas which have high species diversity, high species richness. Okay, but all these species are in extreme endemism. Okay, so that means if you are not taking care, they will be lost. Okay, so these are the regions with very high species richness. You have to remember, very high species richness and high degree of endemism, but most threatened. Okay, so all hotspots together cover only less than 2 total landscape of world. If you compare with the hotspots, only less than 2% of the land area is denoted as hotspot. Clear? So how much percentage? Less than 2% of the entire area of the world is considered as hotspot. Okay, so protection of hotspots reduced the ongoing extinctions by 30%. So we can protect, that is biologists found out that by notifying hotspots and protecting hotspots, we can decrease the endangered species or extinction, we can say. Clear? So how much? 30% reduction was noticed. So next thing, so apart from this, international efforts for conserving biodiversity was also carried out in 1992. In Rio de Janeiro, Earth Summit was planned. Okay, and here, what are the objectives of this Earth Summit which happened in Rio de Janeiro in 1992? Conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of biodiversity, because if we keep on using, exploiting the resources, natural resources, definitely all the species will be lost. Okay, sharing of benefits arising from genetic resources. So for example, if in India we are having different species, we have to share the resources to other countries so that they will also have richness, species richness. Okay, so all these are the agenda for this Earth Summit which happened in 1992, Rio de Janeiro. I'm again and again stressing the year and place where the Earth Summit happened and what are the major agenda. Conservation of biodiversity, that is control in the use of natural resources and sharing the benefits of genetic resources. Okay, in between countries. So the second one is again happened in the year 2002 in Johannesburg. That is called as World Summit. First one is the Earth Summit. Second one is World Summit. So in World Summit, that is Johannesburg, South Africa, totally 190 countries participated and they took oath to reduce the current rate of biodiversity loss. So they plan to reduce the biodiversity loss in this World Summit. Clear? So World Summit happened in the year 2002 in Johannesburg, South Africa. The main agenda is to prevent biodiversity loss. How to prevent the loss of biodiversity. Okay. So let us see few questions. The most important cause of loss of biodiversity today is, so all are, that is alien species inversion and even co-extinction. What do you mean by co-extinctions? Co-extinctions means, for example, what is the food for tiger? If I take food for tiger, maybe yak or deer. Okay, so if these two species are extinct, that is the food of tiger become extinct, automatically tiger will become extinct. Clear? So this is called as co-extinction. Clear? And alien species inversion, I already explained. Okay, Parthenium species inversion in Australia removed so many species. So for that, for the removal of Parthenium, again, government used so many insects for destroying Parthenium. And over-exploitation means human use. Human activities, and again, use of overuse, you can say, overuse of any species. Overuse of any species. And habitat loss and fragmentation. So habitat loss, I already explained you, for the benefit of humans, they are destroying, keep on destroying the forest areas. So that is known as habitat loss. And even if you see so many, that is urbanization, even the nearby land or even forest areas are being destroyed for development of cities. Okay, so that leads to habitat loss and fragmentation. So this is the, as of now, this is the most important cause of biodiversity loss today. Okay. Second question is, when a threatened plant needs urgent measures to save it from extinction, the desirable approaches. So threatened plant, if we didn't save this plant now, it will extinct. That is called as threatened plant. So needs urgent measures. We cannot provide protection in the environment because 24/7 we cannot provide protection for that plant in situ conservation. So only possibility is ex-situ conservation. So we have to bring the plant and we have to keep in botanical gardens. Okay. Botanical gardens. And we can save them. Clear? Third question is, the greatest biodiversity on earth is found in. So I already explained about this. Okay, Amazonian rainforest in South America is having the greatest, the most biodiversity on earth is found in Amazonian rainforest in South America. Okay. Next question is, the hotspots of biodiversity conservation are characterized by. Hotspots, what do you mean by hotspots? High species richness and high endemicity. Okay. Yes, high endemicity and high threat of extinction. Low endemicity and high threat of extinction. High endemicity and low threat of extinction. So both are high. Okay. Highly endemic and highly threat of, they are having high threat of extinction also. The next question is, the most effective means of conservation of biodiversity is, the most effective means of conservation of biodiversity is remove predators, preserve habitats, vaccinate against disease, no, census the species during breeding season, no, preserve habitats. Okay, so if you remove predators, automatically where the predators will go. Okay, this is not the right answer. We have to preserve the habitats. So the next one is, Alexander von Humboldt described for the first time ecological biodiversity, law of limiting factor, species area relationship, population growth equation. So let me explain. That is, this biologist, he created one formula for species area relationship. Okay, that is log S is equal to log C plus Z log E. So A is area and S is species richness and C is y-intercept and Z is slope of line. So that is based on this biologist, that is, if you increase the area, automatically the species richness will increase. That is the concept, okay? But up to certain limit that you have to remember. Up to certain limit, if you increase the area, the number of species diversity will also increase. That is called a species area relationship that was proposed by Alexander von Humboldt. Okay. The highest number of species in the world is represented by, so you have to take care about the options here. So if the insects are given, you have to select insect, but here insects are not there. Algae, mosses, lichens, and fungi. So fungi, highest number of species are present in among 4. Fungi have so many number of species. The next question is, which one of the following have the highest number of species in nature? Same, but here fungi is also there and insects. So here the correct answer is insects. Clear? Yes, thank you. Do you have any doubt? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think just